Hi, and welcome back to Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. I am your host, John Strazicich, and we are continuing in our study through the book of Hebrews, and tonight we're going to land in chapter 9, so if you have your Bibles, go ahead and get them out, and we will begin. Okay, so coming here to this particular slide, we'll kind of tee off our session here with a quote from Thompson that introduces us to the unit that we're looking at here tonight. In 9:11 and 12, the critique of the ministry in the earthly sanctuary in 9:1-10 places the contrast in 9:11 to 14 in bold relief. For now, the author contrasts the ministry of Christ with that of the earthly sanctuary, declaring that Christ has done what the Levitical regulations could not do. The coming good things, 9:11, are the equivalent of the time of Reformation mentioned back in 9:10, and of the new covenant anticipated in the first covenant back in 8:7-13, when God would remember their sins no more. This new situation occurs when Christ, the high priest, arrived. Christos de paragenomenos archierus, that just means, but when Christ arrived as high priest. Entering the heavenly world, when Christ arrived at God's right hand, he entered through the greater and more perfect tent, opening the way that had been previously closed. And he wants to put in there 9:8. Remember that we looked at that pneumatological statement back there in 9:8 last time. As the author indicates later, the community now has access to the heavenly sanctuary because the high priest has gone through the curtain that separates heaven and earth. Believers who are now on their way to the heavenly homeland may now draw near to God because their pioneer, back there in 2:10, and forerunner had entered behind the curtain, becoming the high priest according to the order of Melchizedek, the source of eternal salvation. The Day of Atonement ritual described in 9:1-10 provides the lens for interpreting the work of Christ in 9:11-14, and that's important. Just as the Levitical high priest went through the curtain separating the two tents, the exalted Christ went through the greater, more perfect tabernacle, and the equivalent of the true tabernacle, and the archetype that Moses saw on the mountain. It's the heavenly counterpart to the earthly tabernacle, the άγιον κοσμικον, that we mentioned last time back here in 9:1. As a tabernacle not made with hands, and that is not of this creation, it is the one that the Lord had made, or the Lord had pitched, and the better, more perfect tabernacle belongs not to the world that is passing away, but to the one that is invisible and unshakable. So that, I thought Thompson did a good job introducing us to basically what we're going to be looking at here in these few verses in 11-14. Okay, now coming to this particular slide, we're just going to pick up where we typically always do. We've got our text for the evening, and then we have our structural analyses, and so we'll devote some time here giving a translation of the text and some structuring devices for us to understand how the flow of the text is coming about, and looking at the structural devices within the text itself. So we'll just start off with our translation. But Christ, when he appeared as high priest of the good things that have come, through the greater and more perfect tent, not made of hands, that is, not of this creation, nor by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, he entered once for all into the sanctuary, having obtained eternal redemption. Gar. For if the blood of goats and bulls and ashes of a heifer that sprinkle those that have been defiled sanctify for the purpose of the cleansing of the flesh, how much more the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself blameless to God, shall cleanse, and then we're going to read here, humon, your conscience from dead works in order to serve the living God. And for this reason, he is a mediator of a new covenant, so that those who have been called might receive the promise of an eternal inheritance, since there is since a death occurred for the redemption of transgressions at the time of the first covenant. Okay, so that's our translation here of this particular unit. We included verse 15 here, just because we had so much energy going and we wanted to look at this phrase diatuta, since it looks back and kind of sums up everything nicely. But I did here keep this in a different unit here that goes from 15 to 22. But we'll look at this, but we'll deal with it more in our next our next presentation. But looking here at verses 11 to 14, okay, when we come here, we have this adversative de here. And what we do need to disclose here is that this is a part of a mende construction beginning at verse 1. And then this de picks up here at verse 11. Okay, so we got to go all the way back to 9:1 to get the men and then the de. So what's going on here is there's a big comparison between whatever's going on in verses 1 to 10, and then the contrast comes in 11 to 14. And that's the way the text is set up structurally, okay, through a mende construction. And really this whole unit here could be from 1 to 14 divided in 1 to 10 and then 11 to 14. Hence I have the limitation of the first covenant sacrificial efficaciousness, 9:1 to 10, the eternal efficaciousness of Christ's new covenant sacrifice, 11 to 14. So that shows you some of the contrast, the synkrisis that's going on here between these two units. But to view them structurally, probably we're going to follow here Thompson, our lead on that. And thanks for his tip on that. That was very excellent. So there may need to be a slight revision of how we look at what's going on here in verses 1 to 14. Okay, need to look at it as a compare and contrast. Mande. Okay. Okay. So coming here. So, but when Christ appeared as high priest of the good things that have come, all right, through the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made of hands, that is, not of this creation. Okay, so we're going to stop there, because when we come here to verse 12, see, conceptually, this is talking about Christ entering through the heavenly tabernacle, or the heavenly sanctuary. Okay, and that's this big but here. But so contrasting with the Levites and the Aaronids entering into the άγιον κοσμικον, the earthly tabernacle, or the earthly sanctuary. Okay, back there in verse 1. So that's what's being contrasted here. So, but when we come to verse 12, it's the emphasis. This is on the entry through the heavenly tabernacle. Now that's still going on in verse 12, but now he's entering it not by the means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood. Okay, so then, and we'll have to look back to Leviticus here. Remember that Aaron could not enter into the tabernacle at any time and in any fashion how he wanted to. He had to enter into the Holy of Holies with the blood of a bullock for his own sin and for the sins of his house, and then he needed to have another sin offering of another goat for the sins of the people. So he entered in twice into the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement, and he first made cleansing for himself and his house. That is the Levitical priests. Okay, and then once again then for the people by the blood. So this is when it's talking about the blood of tragon and moskon here, the blood of goats. Okay, that would be for the people, and then the blood of a bullock here, or a calf, that would be for himself and his immediate Levitical family of the priests and Levites. Okay, and for himself, and we'll see this in Leviticus. So the conceptuality here, 11's dealing with. Okay, look at here. Verse 11, Christ's entry through the heavenly tabernacle. Okay, it's through the greater and more perfect tabernacle, and then it's negatively defined, not made of hands. That is, it's not of this creation. So now we know we're talking about, it's not about Aaron's άγιον κοσμικον, the earthly tabernacle, but this is the άγιον ούρανικον, okay, the heavenly sanctuary. Okay, we could state it that way. But when you come to verse 12, okay, Christ's entry into the sanctuary by his superior sacrificial blood. So he's coming. Remember, the high priest has to enter with blood. Okay, you're not just coming in there willy-nilly. Okay, you got to come into God's presence, into the Holy of Holies, with sacrificial blood. Okay, so it sets it up here that Christ didn't have to come in with Aaron's, the blood of goats and bulls, but he came in with his very own blood. Okay, and so that was the means by which he entered here. So that's the conceptual understanding of verse 12. Okay, so he's entering through spatially through the heavenly tabernacle in verse 11, but in 12 he's entering that heavenly sanctuary by means of his own blood. Okay. Now it has these it has these three uses of dia here. Okay. All right. And it is chiastically constructed, and all, commentators have noted this, and so whether if you look at Lane, or you happen to look at Ellingworth or whatever commentator, they're all going to mention this. Okay. And so this is stated positively, this A, and then the B is stated negatively. So we've got an AB and then BA. And then so this is stated negatively, and then this is stated positively. Okay, so this makes this ABBA construction. So that makes your chiastic construction there. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. So it'll state it positively, negatively concerning his entry through the tabernacle, or the heavenly sanctuary, and then in the other prepositionally phrased contrast is that he enters not by means of goats and calves' blood, but by means of his own blood. Okay, so that this is creating this whole unit here, but it divides here because when you come to 12, it's then talking about blood. Okay, so there is and there's a different use of the preposition. The in verse 11, dia is used spatially, whereas in verse 12, dia is used instrumentally. Okay, by means of. Okay, and then following here in verse 12, he entered. Where did he enter? He entered into specifically the sanctuary. Okay, the tahagia. Okay. And that was once for all, and the purpose of that entry was for obtaining eternal redemption. Okay, so I'm taking this, I guess we'll look at it when we come to the diagrammatical analysis. And then when we come here to verses 13 and 14, we have an a-fortiori argument. Okay, and look down here at verse 13, we have gar. Okay, so in 13 to 14, it's another periodic sentence, just like 11 to 12 was one long periodic sentence. So is 13 to 14, and it's a basis statement. Okay, and so it's the basis of verses 11 and 12. This a-fortiori argument, or we could say a cal. וחמר, we can go like this, a cal וחמר interpretation, from light to heavy, from the strong. Okay, that's literally this a-fortiori argument here. That means it goes from a lesser to a greater argument. And that's how it's set up here. If we look at verse 13, for if the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling those who have been defiled, sanctify for the purpose of the cleansing of the flesh, how much more, okay, the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself blameless to God, shall cleanse humon instead of hamon, your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. Okay, so that sets up this. We have protasis and an apodosis, first class condition, all that, and it sets up verses 13 here, which is the protasis, and then we got the apodosis in verse 14. So this just like 11 to 12 divided up, verse 11 and verse 12, 13 and 14 has the same unit. So the Stephen Langton had a clue when he was putting in the verses into the chapter divisions that he already had. So he was following the flow and logic, but not always obviously do these these sentences nicely divide up the text. There's that's contested all the time. And so what we have here, verses 13 to 14, then are talking about the lesser argument that the talking about what the blood of goats and calves did underneath the first covenant versus what Christ's blood did underneath the second covenant. So that's this whole this whole compare and contrasting thing, and this argument here of this a-fortiori argument. Okay, so when you look here, for if the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of the ashes of a heifer, okay, sprinkling of those who are defiled, purify for the cleansing of the flesh, how much more? So then that's the basis then for the apodosis that follows. How much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself blameless to God, shall cleanse your conscience from dead works in order to serve the living God. So that sets up the whole compare and contrast, that the blood of Christ is superior. And remember here that conceptually what we're looking here at this unit, we're not looking, this doesn't really look at the cross. Okay, remember the Day of Atonement, outside in the courtyard, the sacrifices were made, okay, but the high priest didn't bring the sacrifice in, he brought the blood in. He brought the blood into the holy place and the Holy of Holies, in order then to make purification not only for Aaron himself and for his house, but for the whole nation. Okay, and also he cleansed the tabernacle itself from ceremonial defilement, and that was done once a year. And so this sets up this whole thing that Christ did this here once for all right? He only did it once. It doesn't need to be done yearly. It's done just one time, because it's the blood of God is way more powerful than the blood of goats and bulls. Okay, remember, the blood of goats and bulls got you to the air-conditioned side of Sheol. Okay, we understand that as how where nobody went to heaven in the old covenant. Okay, there was Abraham's bosom. Hell was divided into an air-conditioned side called Abraham's bosom, and then the hot side that was divided by a chasm. Remember, just remember the story that Jesus told about Lazarus and the rich man, right? So that would tell you that hell, everybody went to hell. That's where everybody went to hell in the Old Testament. It was just whether or not you were going to be in the air-conditioned side or not. Okay, Abraham's bosom side, where Lazarus found himself. Okay, now the blood of Christ can get you all the way into heaven. Okay, so that's what's going on here. This is talking about the blood. Okay, the sacrifice took place outside, on the cross. Okay, but the blood must be brought within the veil. Okay, and this is following the whole thing of the Day of Atonement. Okay, which we'll see. So in order to understand this, the it's not just the sacrifice that's taking place at the bronze altar. This is about Christ bringing his own blood into heaven within the veil to present it to God for the purpose of obtaining eternal redemption. Okay, so that's the purpose for this. So the author of the book of Hebrews, he knows exactly what he's doing, and the readers are following along because they understood the actual mechanics of the Day of Atonement. That it's the blood, the power is in the blood. Okay, so let me tell you, there is nothing more powerful than the blood of Jesus. All right, and you should sing songs about the blood of Jesus. Okay, anybody that doesn't want to sing about the blood, they have forgotten that they've been cleansed from their old sins. Okay, and it's an abomination before God. The blood is the most important thing here, and it's the precious blood of Jesus that obtained our eternal redemption. Okay, so there's a reason why when Christ told I believe it was Mary not to touch him. I haven't ascended to my Father. I mean, don't touch me. I mean, I have not made the offering for eternal redemption yet. I haven't ascended. So we need to think about those things theologically. But moving along here in this text, so you'll see that verses 13 and 14 set up this whole argument from lesser to greater, and then the greater argument obviously is the punchline is in 14. How much more, right? The blood of Christ, shall cleanse our conscience from dead works to serve the living God. So that contrasts heavily back, in 1:9 to 10. Okay, so all of this. So you need to see that 1 to 14 is a unit, and it is structurally divided by the Mendeh, and it nicely divides into 2 units. Okay, all right. So that should be important for you conceptually working forward, for anyone here looking and trying to utilize whatever they can out of this structural analysis. And then it ends in this purpose clause, to serve the living God, and that's the whole purpose, that we can serve God, not having a reminder of our old sins, that we are cleansed from our transgressions and iniquities, that Christ's blood is able then to cleanse our very consciences, and it's it is awesome, you guys. If when you look back, you can look at people that were once drug addicts. Okay, they were bound in sin, and Christ set them free, and then you look a couple years later, and you would never ever know that they were ever a drug user. Okay, you would never know that lady used to be a prostitute. You'd never know that person used to, be a big liar and a big cheater and a swindler or whatever. Christ sets us free, and we don't look the same, and we have His Spirit within us, and His blood cleanses us from all of our sin, and the very purpose is so that we can serve the living God. Okay, how awesome. Okay, moving along. Okay, coming here, we're going to look at diagrammatically, coming back here to verses 11 to 12 here. And so what we have here, this is our baseline here. But on the other hand, Christ entered, into, once for all, into the sanctuary. And then we can probably pop down here to this this adverbial participle, for the purpose of having found eternal redemption. Okay. So we can look at that as the basic mechanics of the stick outline. But what you'll see here is we have two adverbial participles that break up this whole text and offer a lot of filler. And then we have these prepositional phrases here, and this one was in verse 11 talking about the tabernacle, and then the second one was about by the means of the blood. Okay, so this was instrumental here, and then this one's spatial here, and then this ace it has a purpose, or excuse me, that I'm thinking of something coming later. Okay, I got ahead of myself. But anyhow, so let's look at how this is constructed. So this Christ here is our, is the subject, and our main verb is ace elthen here. And then it's colored here by paragenomenos, archierus, tone agathon, melanton. Okay, so this is a different reading here. So I wanted to put this in here because this is just as valid reading as the other one. So people probably want to capitalize on the other one since it's an aorist participle, and this one here is talking about what's coming. So looking at the King James basis of the text reading here, which is probably a better reading, to be honest with you, in this verse. So Christ, having appeared as high priest of the good things to come. All right, so he's in heaven. You got to remember that this is all, he appeared where? When you understand the text, he's appeared in heaven as the high priest of the good things that are coming. Okay, and indeed, the other reading here, instead of tone melanton, it has genomenon agathon, which is and Christ appeared as high priest of the good things that have come. So it's you want to look at this as a temporal, prior to, subsequent to ace elthen. Okay, so with that reading, and then this one is going to talk about the good things that will be coming. So both are true at the same time. And both of these texts have just as solid testimony to one another. Since they're so close, I think it's good that we enjoy both of them. It's not, you don't have to do either or. You can have both and. Okay, just say, well, this is another strong reading. So not only do we have things that Christ has already brought to us, okay, such as redemption, having found eternal redemption, of course. But remember that, hey, look, you're still losing your hair. You're aging, okay? You weren't the stud you were when you were, in your 20s or 30s, okay? So wrinkles do appear, all right? And there is hair loss, okay? So remember, you don't have your glorified body yet. So we're looking forward to the good things that are coming, because Christ, Christ, not everything is. The price has been paid, but we only have a down payment of the Spirit. We haven't cashed this thing in. Okay, and believe me, there's a whole lot more coming. Eye hasn't seen, ear hasn't heard of the things that God has prepared for those that are going to heaven. So you have to remember, folks, that there is a whole lot more to come. Okay, so he appeared as high priest. So this is set off as a predicate nominative here, and then we have melanton here, or if you want to put in again menon here. They both are adjectival participles that are modifying the good things. Okay. Okay, and then we're going to pick up here on these prepositional phrases here, beginning here, that we're taking these spatially, that Christ entered what? Through the greater and more perfect tent or tabernacle. Okay, so that's what he entered. He entered through the greater and more perfect one. And you're going, okay, well, what's he talking about? It says, not made of hands, that is, not of this creation. Okay, so this statement, this toutistin tes kitisaos ou tautes, it's like an exegetical explanation of what he's talking about, not made of hands. And well, it's not of this creation. So that means it's heavenly. So we're talking about a άγιον ούρανικον here, okay, a heavenly sanctuary versus the άγιον κοσμικον that was mentioned back in 9:1, the earthly tabernacle, okay. And then so then this takes up verse 11 here. We have these prepositional phrase here, through the greater, more perfect tabernacle, and then it says not made of hands, that is, of this creation, and then it's going to then, nor by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood. So that picks up down here where we have this second set here of the preposition dia with udede, okay, the contrasting. He didn't enter by the means of the blood of goats and calves, but, okay, the contrasting, but by means of his own blood, okay, and that was he entered once into the holy places. We'll just say the sanctuary, the heavenly sanctuary, okay. Now we'll pick up on our second adverbial participle that ends this all, this aorist middle, huramenos, okay, for the purpose of having obtained an eternal redemption. So I'm taking this, purposively. This is how this adverbial participle is going to be interpreted, because he did all this for the purpose of what? Of obtaining, our eternal redemption. Okay, and redemption here is typically, this lutrosis, or the here in this in the accusative here, lutrosin here. Typically redemption means you're buying back something. Okay. And biblically, the big thing is that Israel was redeemed, okay, was bought back from slavery out of Egypt to serve God, right, upon Mount Sinai, right? So this is looking at that big, that all that imagery of Egypt, and now that we're looking at New Testament soteriology, that we are redeemed from the power of sin, okay. And this whole thing is typified off of Yom Kippur, right? And so this is this is really cool. This is a very, very, if there's just like, I'm telling you, this part of Hebrews here, this 8, 9, and 10, this is real meat. This is the meat of of New Testament theology. It's right here. Outside of Paul, this is it. It doesn't get any better. These are the most awesome texts. Let's look here to Philip Hughes. So he says, the Levitical high priest passed into the Holy of Holies only after and on the basis of the shedding of blood of the sacrificial victim at the altar in the courtyard outside of the sacred tent. So also, but transcendentally, Jesus, our high priest, first secured our eternal redemption by the sacrifice of himself in the courtyard of this world, i.e. on the cross, and then by virtue of his own blood passed from sight into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God on our behalf. So the big man, Philip Hughes, he's a great commentator, of yesteryear. Very good, very, very good comments. He is an excellent scholar, highly theological in his interpretation, which we all love, and I think he nails it here. So let's look a little bit about, he made this statement, but what was his statement made on? Of course, everything's made here on the basis of the Old Testament text. So I'm not going to read all of this, but we can pick up here. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe acharei mot shnei b'nei Aharon b'kor batam lifnei Adonai vayamutu vayomer Adonai el Moshe daber el Aharon ahicha ve'al yabo b'kol eight el hakodesh mibeit la parochet el penei hakaporet asher al ha'aron v'lo yamut ki be'anan era'e al hakaporet. Okay, and then this is important, verse 3. Bizot yabo Aharon el hakodesh bifar ben bakar le hatat v'ayil le olah. Okay, so there's this goes right to our text here. So let me just translate this. So it says, and Yahweh spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they approached before Yahweh and they died. And Yahweh said to Moses, speak to Aaron your brother, that he does not go at any time into the sanctuary from within the parochet, right, within the veil, before the mercy seat, which is above the ark, or really literally on top of it, that he not die. For I will appear in a cloud above the mercy seat. By this Aaron shall enter into the sanctuary with the blood of a bullock for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Okay, so you just don't enter willy-nilly, but you have to come with blood. So that goes right back to our text, okay, where Aaron had to come in with blood, okay, for himself and for the sins of the people. Okay, but it said that Christ, it said that he didn't enter the heavenly sanctuary with the blood of goats and bulls, but with his own blood. Okay, so he didn't have to make two trips. He didn't have to make two trips, one for himself and then one for the people. Christ only came in once into the presence before God because he was sinless, and his offering was pure, and it was the blood of his God's own Son, the divinity itself. By the blood of God we've been redeemed. Okay, so this all of this theology comes here from Leviticus 16. Okay, so you guys look, for I know we're all interested and we're all into the New Testament, whatever. Okay, but remember, the New Testament is the second story of the house. Okay, it's built upon the first story. Okay, so in order to get and to understand the second story, you got to come through the door downstairs. Okay, you got to understand the Old Testament. The Old Testament is the basis for all theology of the New Testament. Okay, so you can see that it's so important here that we, what I'm trying to tell you is that just don't just study Greek. You need to go ahead and it's important that we got all this time on earth. Learn the biblical languages and learn that 3/4 of your sword is all written in Hebrew, right? Okay. And he will take some of the blood of the bull and he will sprinkle it with his finger upon before the mercy seat, right, eastward, and before the Kippur, he will sprinkle it 7 times from the blood, with his finger. And he will slaughter the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people, and he will bring its blood in, within the parochet, within the veil, and he will do with its blood as he did with the blood of the bull. So you can see here that there's a 2-step process here in 14 that he goes in there twice, once for himself and for his house, and then another time for the people. All right, and he's sprinkling the blood. Okay, and he's making atonement for the sanctuary, which is defiled by the sons of Israel from their transgressions and all their uncleanness, right? Of their sin. And thus he'll do for the tent of meeting. Okay, all right, which dwells in their midst, in the midst of their uncleanness. So this stuff is it's very important, but this is the basis, and so this is how we, so when we look back at these chiastically structured dia prepositions, right? The first half talks about how he entered into the tabernacle, right? He's entering through the holy place into the Holy of Holies, past the parochet, the veil, into into the Holy of Holies, right? And he's passing through spatially through the Heavenly Tabernacle, and then he does it by means of his own blood. And it says specifically, he didn't do it by the means of the blood of bulls and goats. The blood of bulls and goats won't get you to heaven, and that sacrifice won't make it's not fit for heaven. Okay, so God's blood is what redeems us and grants us this whole eternal redemption. This is awesome. Okay, we'll move on. So we're kind of getting set up here. I guess we should look here at Leviticus 17. Anyone from the house of Israel or from the stranger that sojourns in their midst, who shall eat any blood, okay, I will set my face against the soul that eats blood, and I will cut it off from the midst of its people. And then nephesh here, for the life of the flesh, it is in the blood, and I have netativ, I have given it lachem to you, all hamizbeach, upon the altar, le kaper, to make atonement on behalf of your souls, ki hadam hu ba nefesh yikaper, for the blood, it makes atonement for the soul. Okay, so this whole thing here, that's what's going on here. It's the blood that makes atonement. And that's why you don't eat blood. Nobody should be eating blood. That's a part of the mandate in Acts 15. Some of these cultures, they love eating blood or whatever. All that's a bunch of garbage. You're not supposed to be partaking of blood. Okay, that's uncleanness. The life is in the blood. Okay, you are not to eat or drink blood. I'm just letting you know that's just what the Bible says. And God was really set on He's going to set his face to cut you off. He's going to screw with you. All right? You do not mess with blood because you'll defile yourself. Okay? The life is in the blood, and God has given blood upon the altar to make atonement for the soul. Okay, and so then Christ, his own blood, shed his own blood, brought his own blood in to make atonement for us. He's our heavenly high priest. Very, very, very important. And not something to be neglected or just dealt with. You need to take that serious, okay? Don't get into bloodletting. Okay, I don't know. We've looked. That's just looking here at the genomenon interpretation. We can move on from there. Okay. This is just looking at this one. Just looking here, we have this gar here on a standard, and we have our subject, the blood of Christ. Okay. And we have this, we have a protasis here, and it's a first-class condition because it comes with a present tense verb. So for if the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer, which sprinkle those who are defiled, right, makes holy or sanctifies for the purpose of the cleansing of the flesh, how much more, okay, right here, malon paso, okay, how much more the blood of Christ cleanse humon, your conscience from dead works. Drop down here to get this apa ergon necron here, because there's not enough room here so this line here picks up the this interrogative malon paso here, and also apa ergon necron here. So this prepositional phrase, how much more the blood of Christ shall cleanse your conscience from dead works. Now we have a purpose clause, eis to serve the living God. Okay, so and then we have this relative subordinate clause, who offered himself blameless to God through the eternal Spirit. Okay, so that's the mechanics of verses 13 and 14, and so this is a baseline for the relative clause, which has here is the subject. This is our main verb, and he offered, and so we have this double accusative, himself, and as spotless, and then the indirect object to God, and then here by the agency or the medium through by means of the Holy Spirit. Okay, boom. So that shows us how this sentence is constructed, and we'll move along. So this, I just wanted here to pick up here. We'll come here to verse 15, which we'll pick up with point gamma, Christ's mediator of a new covenant, 15 to 22. And then Christ qualifies as the mediator of the new covenant, and then its resultant basis, for his mediatorial role of the new covenant, i.e. his efficacious sacrifice, 15a, then the purpose of his sacrifice, the redemption of the called to an eternal inheritance, 15b. So we'll look at that here diagrammatically. And he is, okay, so we have to, so he is this, we'll supply he from the verb est. He is the mediator of a new covenant. So we have this diatuta. For this reason, he is a mediator of a new covenant. Okay, so we have this predicate nominative construction here with mesites, referring to Christ, that he's the mediator for this reason. Why? Because he was the one who entered into heaven, into the heavenly tabernacle, passed through the holy place into the Holy of Holies by means of his own blood in order to secure our eternal redemption. Okay, before God offering himself spotless. Boom. That is the heart of the gospel. That is the heart of, that's how we're saved. Okay, this is the gospel right here. Okay. So we'll look at this purpose clause here, so that those who have been called might receive the promise of an eternal inheritance. And then we have this causal use here of genitive absolute, since a death occurred for the redemption of transgressions at the time of the first covenant. So this is how we understand how this whole sentence is constructed. So so what happens is that you make these little lines here. It's dotted like this in order to push this whole part over here in this direction. So we'll have more room to put it down here, because the writing becomes too small here. So sometimes you have to improvise and do whatever you need to. But we have the main baseline here. For this reason, he is mediator of a new covenant, and then the purpose that it's a subordinate clause that comes out of this. That those call this is a substantive use of perfect passive here, that those who have been called might receive here, some air subjunctive, might receive what? The promise of an eternal inheritance. So we got to remember that this is all looking future here. All right, so we haven't got this yet. We haven't got this eternal inheritance yet. I mean, we partake of it, but it's ours. It's there, but we haven't realized it yet. Okay, we will when Christ returns, or you'll get most of it. If you die, you won't get all of it until you get your body back. Remember, it's called a resurrection. That's the end game. Okay, and then this is a causal use here of this adverbial part, this adverbial use of the genitive absolute, I guess we should say. Okay, and this is it shows purpose here for the purpose of redemption of transgressions underneath the first covenant. Boom. Okay, so that sets us up for 15 to 22 for next time. All right. So, folks, now, hopefully you're enjoying this as much as I am. I mean, let me tell you something. When you teach this, you learn so much more than and there's so much more I didn't include. There's just so much to enjoy in these texts. Hebrews is a gold mine. Okay, so this is one of the most important texts. It is Christologically the most dense, one of the most dense books in the New Testament that we got. So this is superior. So if you ever want to park it, just park it in 1 through 10, man, I'm telling you, you get everything you need to know. You're going to find it out in those chapters. Wow, it's just intense. Okay, well, thank you for hanging out and for another session here, Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always driven by the context, okay? Meaning is always in situ. It has to, words have meaning within the context in which they're situated. And that's a very good hermeneutical and exegetical rule to follow. All right, till next time.